Hello, everyone, and welcome to Spaceflight Now's live coverage of the latest mission from Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. I'm Will Robinson Smith, reporter with Spaceflight Now. So good to be with you all on this Sunday morning here on Florida's Space Coast. We are broadcasting, as we always do, from the Spaceflight Now News Bureau here at NASA's Kennedy Space Center. Clouds abound once again as SpaceX is hopefully on this fourth attempt going to be able to launch 24 satellites for Amazon's Project Kuiper broadband internet constellation. Taking a look now over the turn basin here at the press center, where meteorologists have forecast a 45% chance for unfavorable weather today. So 55% chance that this thing is able to go from a weather perspective. As with the last launch attempt that we saw yesterday, the impact from cumulus clouds, anvil clouds, and lightning still remain in play. Forecasters suggest liftoff winds trending between 12 to 18 miles per hour. Weather in the booster recovery area looks good, a little further up the coast. So that has never been a watch item per se for this mission. But there's always been just something that's gone slightly amiss that's kept this Falcon 9 on the ground so far. Hopefully the fourth time will be the charm. Speaking of charm, we're charmed that a little more than 500 of you are with us now live as we're kicking things off this morning. If you haven't already, you could do us a big favor just by clicking that like button and sharing the stream, allowing some more folks to find their way into this live launch coverage. Taking a look at our live chat, I want to thank moderator Rick Donner, one of our channel members, for hopping in with us today, helping to keep things kosher in the live chat. You can help make Rick's job that much easier just by following the rules of the chat. We ask that you converse in English so that Rick and any of the other mods who cruise on in can respond as appropriate. That you hold off from typing in all caps and don't delve into overt politics or religion. And last but not least, that you treat each other with the kindness and respect that you yourself would like to be treated. As is the case with all of our broadcasts, this stream as well is made possible by support from our wonderful channel member community here on YouTube. So thanks to folks like Dan Santarserio, The Rocket Girl, Butterfly, El Richie, Marcel Lundy, and many others. Channel membership comes with a number of perks, including discounts at our online shop, which is shop.spacelightnow.com. Access to member-only videos here on YouTube, access to our members-only Discord server, and of course the ability to watch all of our live launch liftoff moments from here in Florida in 4K. And hopefully we'll have one of those liftoffs for you coming up in just about 55 minutes from now. Last but not least, if you have a comment or question about this mission or other goings-on in the realm of space or spaceflight, you can use the YouTube Super Chat feature to have your comment or query elevated for discussion. Not only will it be giving us some interesting things to talk about as we cruise on through the count, but you'll also be supporting what we do here at Spaceflight Now, and that, my friends, is always greatly appreciated. Today's mission is, as it has been for our last few broadcasts, the launch of 24 Project Kuiper satellites on behalf of Amazon. Today's Falcon flight represents the second out of three Falcon 9s purchased by the tech giant in order to get its satellites into low Earth orbit. 24 satellites on this Falcon 9 matches the same number that the company launched with its first mission with a Falcon rocket, KF-01. There will be one more Falcon flight on the books as things stand right now in order to help expand the low Earth orbit constellation for Amazon. Currently 78 satellites on orbit. This launch will bring them up to 102. The first two flights for the Project Kuiper constellation used United Launch Alliance Atlas V rockets. Amazon bought 9 of those in order to help bolster its constellation. The first of those Atlas V rockets was used for the proto-flight mission, though, sending up 2 demonstration Kuiper satellites to test out both the on-orbit capabilities and also the ground systems for Amazon before it made its final changes and moved into deploying its production satellites this year. Originally, that pair of prototype satellites was set to fly on the first Vulcan rocket, which launched Astrobotic's Peregrine lander back in January of 2024. However, because of delays to that mission and the debut of Vulcan, Amazon made the decision to demanifest from the Vulcan rocket and instead fly on Atlas V back in October of 2023. Amazon still has 6 Atlas V rockets in addition to 38 launches on board Vulcan, with dedicated flights of that rocket to send up its satellites into low Earth orbit. A Vulcan rocket can launch up to 45 of these Kuiper satellites at one time. Falcon 9 launches 24 and the Atlas V launches 27. Right now, though, ULA is busy over at its pad at Space Launch Complex 41 in preparation for the launch of its first national security mission using its Vulcan rocket now that it is fully certified to do so. That is the USSF 106 mission. You can read all about it right now on our website, spaceflightnow.com. That article focused mostly on the Vulcan rocket itself, not so much specifically on the mission at hand. But be sure to come back to our website on Monday when we'll have more of a write-up focused on the payload on board and the U.S. Space Force now being able to utilize Vulcan in order to launch national security missions into low Earth orbit. Of course, the next big rocket that's going to be added to that lineup in the probably not too distant future will be Blue Origin's New Glenn rocket, which had its first launch back earlier this year. Looking for Flight 2 at some point in the latter half of 2025. Blue Origin CEO Dave Limp said that they were targeting mid-August for the next launch of that rocket. Obviously, that has been delayed somewhat, so still looking for a more specific launch date for that second launch of New Glenn. TBD on exactly when that will happen, but we do know that it will fly NASA's Escapade mission, a pair of twin satellites with technology from the University of California, Berkeley on board. Those satellites, nicknamed Blue and Gold, the colors of Berkeley, were built by Rocket Lab at their Long Beach facilities in California. Bringing it all back here to the Falcon 9 rocket launch set to lift off in about 48 minutes and 46 seconds. Let's go ahead and talk about what we're expecting in the next 3/4 of an hour or so before this rocket is ready to lift off. Countdown to the launch of a Falcon 9 rocket, of course, begins with the go ahead for the start of fueling that is issued at T minus 38 minutes. Once the go ahead for fueling is given, then prop load begins at T minus 35 minutes when SpaceX starts loading liquid oxygen on board the first stage, as well as RP-1, a rocket grade kerosene on board the first and second stages of its Falcon 9. 30 minutes out, SpaceX will start to load a cryogenic helium on board the pressure vessels for the Falcon 9's first stage. Same will be true on the second stage a few minutes afterwards. And helium, of course, is important because it's used to pressurize the main propellant tanks during flight. 23 minutes out, the second stage RP-1 tank is full. Then at T minus 20 minutes and 50 seconds is when the strong back chill down process begins. SpaceX thermally conditions the feed lines there at the pad ahead of second stage liquid oxygen loading. We see this manifest as the so-called big vent, beginning at about T minus 20 minutes and 20 seconds. That vent lasts for roughly 4 minutes, setting up for LOX to begin flowing on the second stage at the 16-minute mark. Moving right along, at 7 minutes before flight, the chill down of the 9 Merlin 1D engines begins. SpaceX will flow a small amount of liquid oxygen through the plumbing and turbo pumps to help protect those engines from the risk of thermal shock and damage during startup. 6 minutes before takeoff, the first stage kerosene tank is full. Then at T minus 4.5 minutes, the strong back retract will get underway. The clamp arms just beneath the payload fairings will open up, and then the transporter erector, otherwise referred to as the strong back, will lean back a few degrees from the Falcon 9 rocket and stay in that position until liftoff. And then at that point, it'll pull back in a much more rapid fashion to clear the way for the vertical climb of that Falcon 9. 3 minutes before takeoff, the first stage liquid oxygen tank is full. Same is true on the second stage about a minute afterwards, at which point the Falcon 9 rocket is fully loaded with 1 million pounds of propellant. In the final 60 seconds, as the Falcon 9 enters startup, control of the countdown is handed over from the ground sequencer to the Falcon 9's onboard flight computers, and the propellant tanks are brought up to flight pressure. SpaceX launch director will give their go for launch 45 seconds before takeoff. The engine ignition command will be issued at T minus 3 seconds. And if all 9 Merlin engines are healthy and ignite as expected, the command will be given for the hold down clamps to release the Falcon 9 rocket, hopefully today. The liftoff scheduled for 8:57 a.m. Eastern, 12:57 UTC, or just about 45 minutes from now. Taking a look at our live chat here, so we've got Catherine Oman checking in from Indian Harbor Beach. El Mandalorian joining us from Titusville. Debris with views, well, virtual views from Rocky, Colorado. Let us know where you're watching from today. It's always great to see where our global audience is representing. So we've got Canada and California in the house. Melbourne, Florida, not Australia. Although I'm sure we've got Melbourne, Australia somewhere here in the chat. As weather has persistently been the story of this launch, let's go ahead and take a look at the latest views from the Goes East satellite. This is a short time lapse building in from the pre-dawn hours to as the sun was just rising over Florida. You can see how some of those clouds have been building in offshore. Falcon 9 rocket's going to be making a climb northeast once it does leave the pad. So flying along the east coast of the United States. Hopefully those clouds that are further downrange won't present too much of an issue for this launch today. As has been the case with this mission, there is a roughly half-hour pocket of time during which SpaceX has to maneuver. 27 minutes is what is available to them, beginning at 8:57 a.m. Eastern. We're currently at T-minus 42 minutes, 37 seconds and counting. Coming up in about 4.5 minutes is, generally speaking, when the SpaceX launch director will make the call on the start of prop load for today's flight. We'll have to wait and see how they're feeling about this first launch opportunity and if they go ahead and slide to the right once again. Time now, T-minus 39 minutes and counting. Just about a minute away from when we're expecting the SpaceX launch director to make the call on the start of prop load. We'll also be closely watching to see if there's another adjustment to the T0. Would be the first for today, but we've certainly seen SpaceX shift around with this launch time in their previous attempts. And we do, in fact, have a new T0. We're adjusting our countdown clocks in just a moment here. Stand by. New T0 is 9:13 a.m. Eastern, 13:13 UTC as things currently stand. As a reminder, SpaceX does have a 27-minute window for this opportunity, so a couple more chances to slide to the right if needed. Of course, keep an eye on that as this countdown progresses. Once again, if you are just joining us, SpaceX is targeting a new T0 of 9:13, a shift to the right from the opening of the window at 8:57 a.m. Eastern today. While a reason wasn't stated, likely due once again to weather. For those who weren't with us at the beginning of our broadcast, the 45th Weather Squadron forecast a 45% chance for unfavorable weather for today's launch opportunity. So a 55% chance that things are good enough to progress with launch. Taking a look at our live chat, I want to thank Michael McRory for a $5 super chat. Thank you, Michael. Good to see you today. It says kind of weird. Cloudy every morning for a week in Florida in August and also on the entire East Coast. Yeah, not a lot that we can do about the weather besides keep you all apprised of things as they change. Time now, T minus 48 minutes, 15 seconds and counting. As we are keeping an eye on the weather here, most immediately along Florida's Space Coast, we're also, given that we're in the midst of hurricane season, watching things out in the tropics. During our last launch opportunity, that cone that is being examined by the National Hurricane Center, that was orange. So it was in the 40 to 60% chance for development over the next 7 days. That has now increased to more than 60%. In fact, according to the latest tropical outlook in the 8 a.m. update today, the chance of formation is 80% high over the course of the next 7 days, about a 30% chance of formation over the course of the next 48 hours, though. We're all hoping that we're long past this launch by the time this storm system either reaches Florida or, like the one in the yellow outline, takes a turn and becomes just a fish storm. Here's the description from the National Hurricane Center, and I'll quote them here. Quote, environmental conditions appear conducive for further development of this system, and a tropical depression is likely to form by the middle to latter portion of this week while moving west-northwestward at 15 to 20 miles per hour across the eastern and central tropical Atlantic. Regardless of development, locally heavy rainfall and gusty winds are possible today and Monday across the Cabo Verde Islands. So, not seeing direct impact on Florida just yet from this storm, but unless it takes a bit of a turn at some point before it reaches us here in the Sunshine State, won't be sunny for too long if it reaches our shores. Of course, lots of things are possible with the development of this system over the course of this coming week, and we'll keep you apprised as we do have launches basically every single day this week, at least in the front half as things stand. Hopefully, we won't have this one to deal with tomorrow, but tomorrow evening, we are looking towards the launch of Starlink 17-4 from Vandenberg Space Force Base in California. That'll be followed the next evening by the launch of the Vulcan rocket with USSF 106 from here at the Cape. And then down at Europe Spaceport in French Guiana, also the evening of Tuesday night, looking at the launch of the Ariane 6 rocket with the MEDOP SG-A1 satellite carrying the Sentinel-5 payload as a rideshare. Also got a couple of Starlink satellites that are currently scheduled for middle of the week as well, and one more to cap things off from here at the Cape if all progress and this launch gets off the pad here with the Kuiper mission. 44 minutes and 44 seconds remaining on the clock as things currently stand. About 6 minutes away from when the SpaceX launch director will nominally make a call on whether or not they feel like things are good enough to start loading propellant on this rocket. Just under 39 minutes to go once again before the planned liftoff of this Falcon 9 rocket with 24 Kuiper satellites on board. Just about a minute away now from when the SpaceX launch director is going to make the call one way or the other if they feel like they're in a good enough position to give this a shot and start to fuel the Falcon 9 rocket. For those who are not with us for any of the previous launch attempts, SpaceX is using a brand new Falcon 9 first stage booster for this mission. Tail number B1091 in the SpaceX fleet. This particular first stage is flying without any of the SpaceX lettering that's normally on a booster. And that's because this will eventually become a Falcon Heavy center core. Taking a look at our live chat, see we've got Mark Otto now joining us here, one of our other wonderful moderators. Taking a look at the most recently updated loop from the GOES East satellite. More contemporary look at the cloud formations both over the pad and just offshore. Countdown clock continues to roll, and as it does appear to be the case, it looks like SpaceX may be getting ready to start fueling its Falcon 9 rocket in just about a minute and a half from now. As we wait to see if that is in fact the case, want to welcome in a couple new channel members. Space Coast Rocket Launches joining us with membership at the pad leader level. Welcome aboard to you. And to AI joining us with membership at the mission specialist level. Really appreciate that. And a welcome to the both of you. Glad to have you with us. Also want to thank channel member and one half of C&J Images, Chuck Briggs, for gifting 20 Spaceflight Now memberships. Really appreciate that, Chuck, whose camera view you're seeing right now. And to our newest gifted channel members, welcome aboard to each and every one of you. We're glad to have you with us. If you haven't already, be sure to thank Charles Briggs in the live chat. And we hope you decide to stick around with channel membership beyond the month you were just gifted. T-minus 35 minutes and counting. The clock continues to roll, which certainly suggests that SpaceX is now fueling its Falcon 9 rocket there at Space Launch Complex 40. We're, of course, standing by for visual confirmation of this or word from SpaceX that tanking is in fact underway. As was the case with our last launch attempt, we're going to be looking for signs of vapor as SpaceX loads liquid oxygen on board the Falcon 9's first stage. Unlike with a typical Falcon booster, there's no SpaceX lettering to draw your attention to, but if we take a closer look at the base of the rocket's first stage. If you see where there's a branch that's not stretching fully across the Falcon 9 rocket, but if you see the one that's just sort of curling across the base of the rocket there, that's right about the point at which we'll start to see frost line form as well as a little bit of vapor as the super cold densified liquid oxygen is loaded onto the rocket. It meets the much warmer Florida humid air and creates some vapor, which thankfully will give us a visual cue that fueling is in fact in motion, if that is in fact the case. Given the lighting and the fact that this is a new booster and we don't have any of the soot from the rocket flying back through its own plume, it'll be a little hard to discern at first. Might take a little bit longer than typical, but thankfully there aren't too many heat waves between us and the rocket, so it's not quite as wavy as it has appeared on other launch opportunities. Should be able to discern one way or the other in about the next minute or minute and a half. Just under 32 minutes to go, and you can just start to see a little bit of vapor forming beyond that tree branch I was talking about. Little wisps of vapor, but wisps are good enough since that's an indication that LOX is in fact flowing on board the rocket's first stage, which means SpaceX is fueling the Falcon 9 rocket and locking them into the current T0 time of 8:13 a.m. Eastern, excuse me, 9:13 a.m. Eastern, 13:13 UTC for those around the world. Because SpaceX does use that super cold densified liquid oxygen, they implement a load and go style of fueling with their Falcon 9 rocket. And what that essentially means for all of us is that once fueling has begun, there is no further opportunity to hold the countdown and change the T0. So it's either 9:13 or a stand down for today, but hopefully the weather will finally cooperate and allow this rocket to fly. Time now T minus 27 minutes, 50 seconds and counting. If you're just now joining us, SpaceX is fueling its Falcon 9 rocket once again in the hopes of launching the KF-02 mission, the second flight of a Falcon 9 carrying Amazon's Project Kuiper broadband internet satellites, taking them up into low Earth orbit. At this point in the countdown, in addition to the start of fueling, SpaceX has also begun loading a cryogenic helium onto the pressure vessels for the Falcon 9's first stage. Same will be true on the second stage coming up in about a minute. I want to thank the more than 1,700 of you who are watching along with us live. If you haven't already, you could do us a big favor just by clicking that like button and sharing the stream, allowing some more folks to find their way into this live launch coverage. Also want to thank Gunnar S., one of our wonderful channel members, for gifting 10 Spaceflight Now memberships. Really appreciate that, Gunnar. Good to see you as always. And to our 10 newest gifted members, welcome aboard. Glad to have you with us. If you haven't already, be sure to thank Gunnar in the live chat, and we hope you decide to stick around beyond the month you were just gifted. Just about 26 minutes left on the clock with today's countdown. Today's flight of a Falcon 9 rocket would be SpaceX's 514th to date and the 97th of the year so far. Before we go ahead and progress to the so-called big vent as the feed lines at the pad are chilled, let's talk about SpaceX's workhorse vehicle, the Falcon 9, standing a tall 70 meters or 229 feet in height with a diameter of 3.66 meters or 12 feet. Majority of that, of course, is made up by the Falcon booster, which, again, today's is B1091, a future Falcon Heavy center core. Flying for the first time today, though, at the base of this and every Falcon 9 first stage are 9 Merlin 1D engines, which burn a rocket-grade kerosene and liquid oxygen, of course, as the oxidizer, together producing 1.7 million pounds of thrust at liftoff. Around the engine compartment are black carbon fiber landing legs that will be used to land the first stage on the drone ship. Today, SpaceX will be targeting a touchdown on the ship called a shortfall of gravitas. Above that first stage is the inner stage. This is a composite structure consisting of an aluminum honeycomb core, which is surrounded by carbon fiber. In that image on the right-hand side of your screen, you can see the deployable hypersonic grid fins. These are titanium winglets that provide stability and steering for the Falcon 9 as it comes back through the atmosphere, tail first like a big old dart heading towards that drone ship. At the top of the inner stage are 3 mechanical latches that attach to the vehicle's second stage. And at first stage, main engine cutoff, high-pressure helium is used to release those latches, and 4 pneumatic pushers ensure a clean separation. Also, the second stage engine nozzle is housed safely inside this inner stage adapter until stage separation. Speaking of that second stage, the upper stage of the Falcon 9 rocket is powered by that single modified Merlin engine referred to as a Merlin vacuum engine or an MVac engine. It is equipped with a larger nozzle, which is optimized for burns in the vacuum of space, and therefore giving it the name MVac. It produces more than 220,500 pounds of thrust, and it'll be fired twice on today's flight before deploying the 24 Kuiper satellites into their intended orbit. Like with the first stage, the second stage of the Falcon 9 also burns LOX and RP-1. Following the deployment of the Kuiper satellites, there will be one final deorbit burn, driving the upper stage back into the atmosphere, where it will burn up and help eliminate the risk of unnecessary space debris being created on this mission. Finally, at the top of the Falcon 9 stack are the payload fairings, which currently encapsulate the 24 Kuiper satellites. The fairing halves are made up of a carbon composite material and together stand 13.1 meters or 43 feet in height and are 5.2 meters or 17.1 feet in diameter. One of those fairing halves with the serial number of 155, well, we saw it the last time, SpaceX launched a batch of 24 Kuiper satellites, coming back into SpaceX's employ once again for today's mission, if all goes well and the weather cooperates, of course. Following fairing jettison, the halves will be scooped up by one of SpaceX's recovery ships, brought back through Port Canaveral, then onto the Hangar X site here at the Kennedy Space Center, where they will be examined, refurbished, and turned around for future missions. Just about 22 minutes on the clock right now, and in a couple of minutes, we'll see the so-called big vent as SpaceX conditions the feed lines there at the pad prior to second stage liquid oxygen load. Now, T minus 20 minutes, 45 seconds and counting. At this point, the conditioning of those feed lines there at the pad has begun. We'll see the visual manifestation of that as the so-called big vent coming up in just about 10 seconds. And there you see the big vent now underway. This venting will last about 4 minutes in total, setting the stage for liquid oxygen to start flowing on board the rocket's upper stage at about T minus 16 minutes. Time now T minus 17 minutes and counting. Less than 30 seconds remaining on this big vent. Less than a minute until SpaceX starts to load liquid oxygen on board the rocket's second stage. And there's the end of our big vent for the day. Hopefully the last one we will see for the KFO2 mission. Once this mission launches, next up at Pad 40 will be the launch of Starlink 10-20, a flight of 28 Starlink V2 mini satellites into low Earth orbit. That's coming up as things are currently scheduled on the morning of August 13th. Given the busyness of this week ahead, if you're not already, now is a great time to hit that subscribe button. Make sure you've got notifications turned on as well. So that way you don't miss any of our live launch coverage as it gets underway for not only multiple Starlink missions that are on tap, but also the upcoming flights of Vulcan and Ariane 6 rockets from Cape Canaveral Space Force Station and Europe Spaceport in Kourou, French Guiana, respectively. We're now T minus 13 minutes, 13 seconds away from a launch at 13:13 UTC or 9:13 Eastern here on the East Coast. So far, things continue to progress well towards the hopeful liftoff of this Falcon 9 rocket there at Space Launch Complex 40 at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. Less than 12 minutes to go before the planned liftoff of this Falcon 9 rocket. As we get closer and closer to this launch, also want to remind folks now's a good time, as always, to follow our launch photography team. You can find them at their handles here on X. John is at John Pisani Photo, Adam Aburn NYC, and Michael is at MD Kane Jr. Also, be sure to follow Spaceflight Now, simply at Spaceflight Now. You can also find us on Threads, Blue Sky, and Facebook if you yourself are not on X. Less than 10 and a half minutes to go before they'll launch this Falcon 9 rocket. The next big milestone ahead of liftoff is going to be the chill down of the 9 Merlin engines when SpaceX begins to flow a small amount of liquid oxygen through the plumbing turbopumps to protect, excuse me, to help protect those engines from the risk of thermal shock and damage during startup. We're now starting to get pad level views of the Falcon 9 rocket, courtesy of SpaceX. As you see those clouds hanging over the pad, SpaceX notes that weather still does remain a watch item for them as they progress through the countdown. As SpaceX is hopefully just 8 minutes away from launching its Falcon 9 rocket, let's take a beat to talk about where this rocket's going to be flying once it does leave the pad. Let's talk a little trajectory, shall we? Lifting off from Space Launch Complex 40 at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station, the Falcon 9 rocket will be taking a northeasterly trajectory once it leaves the pad. It's, of course, still very much morning time, so it might be a little hard for our friends up along the coast to see the Falcon 9 as it climbs uphill. But if you are able to spot the rocket, we'd love to see what photography you're able to capture. Be sure to tag us on social media. You can find us on Threads, Facebook, Blue Sky, and X. Following stage separation, the first stage booster, tail number 1091, will target a touchdown on the drone ship called a shortfall of gravitas. If successful, this will be the 120th booster landing for that particular drone ship and the 486th landing on for our Falcon 9 first stage booster to date. Engine chill is now underway. In addition to recovering the first stage booster, SpaceX, of course, is also interested in retrieving those fairing halves. Following their atmospheric reentry, the fairing halves will make their splashdown in the waters of the Atlantic Ocean under the support of steerable parachutes. One of those fairing halves flying for a 28th time, and the other for its fifth. Once down in the water, the fairing halves will be brought aboard one of the recovery vessels, brought back through Port Canaveral, and then over to the Herrick site where they will be refurbished and turned around for future missions. Less than 6 minutes to go currently ahead of the flight of this Falcon 9 rocket. If they are able to launch today, SpaceX does note that at Amazon's request, once again, there will not be any upper stage views of the Falcon 9. The backup window tomorrow would begin at 8:35 if SpaceX is unable to launch today. 5.5 minutes on the clock from the SpaceX view. You'll note there's a slight discrepancy between our clock and the SpaceX views here, just by a couple seconds. Our clock is in real time. What's on the SpaceX screen is coming in on just a slight delay. So we'll be making our callouts based off of real-time events as long as we have ground level tracking views of the Falcon 9 rocket. 5 minutes and counting. Coming upon strong back retraction here. Pressurization for that event is now in work. We'll see those clamp arms just beneath the payload fairings open up momentarily, and then the large structure adjacent to the Falcon 9 rocket, referred to as the strong back, which you can see there. The cradle for the payload fairings juts out with those two yellow tabs there at the very top of the strong back. Retraction now underway. We'll see those clamp arms open up momentarily. You see the arms now opening up. And the strong back is going to be in motion now momentarily. Start in motion with a strong back. It reclines just a few degrees away from the Falcon 9 rocket, and then at liftoff, it'll pull back much more rapidly to clear the way for the rocket to make its ascension. 3.5 minutes to go before liftoff. With just a few minutes left on the clock, I want to thank the more than 5,100 of you who are watching along with us live today. If you haven't already, you could do us a big favor just by clicking that like button and sharing the stream to allow some more folks to find their way into this live launch coverage. Three minutes and counting. Stage one liquid oxygen load is complete. We are awaiting for confirmation of the same on the second stage, which shall come about the 2-minute mark. Now, less than 2 minutes out, the stage one or second stage liquid oxygen tank should be full. Didn't hear a call out for that.
Down one, just want to make everyone aware that we have a no-go condition on recovery weather. We will be standing down at T-minus 30 seconds. At 30 seconds, we will be calling hold. So stand by for that hold call, launch control.
And as you just heard, the weather is no go for the recovery weather for the Falcon 9 rocket, which means in roughly 30 seconds, they will officially call the scrub of this mission.
If you've been tuning into the webcast, you may have just heard that hold during the countdown.
Of course, the Falcon 9 rocket does not have the option to hold and adjust its T0, so a hold is tantamount to a scrub.
Hold, hold, hold.
Launch abort is running.
As you may have heard on the comms, we're standing down from today's launch attempt due to weather. The vehicle and the payload remain in good health, and our next launch opportunity is tomorrow at 8:35 a.m. Eastern Time. As always, thank you for watching, and we hope to see everyone back here for our next attempt.
Certainly unfortunate circumstances now for a fourth time in 4 days, SpaceX standing down from launching the KF-02 mission. Technical issues were at fault at the start of this launch campaign, and weather has remained the sticking point now for days on end. As you heard, the next launch attempt is coming up on Monday morning, also within the 8 o'clock hour, and we'll have our live coverage beginning also, once again, starting 1 hour ahead of liftoff. With that change, that sets up a double launch day for the start of the work week. We are also tracking the currently planned liftoff of the Falcon 9 from Vandenberg Space Force Base on the Starlink 17-4 mission coming up at 7:05 p.m. Pacific, 10:05 p.m. Eastern, 02:05 UTC on the evening of Monday, August 11th. We'll have live coverage on that beginning about 30 minutes before liftoff of that rocket, assuming all goes well there. It's been quite a gap in time there between launches at Vandenberg, more than a week, approaching a week and a half at this point. So hopefully things are in a good position for a launch from Vandy tomorrow night, and fingers crossed things have improved enough from a meteorological perspective that we can actually see this launch of KF-02 Monday morning. As far as the weather is concerned, things are trending better with a launch attempt on Monday. Today there was a 45% chance for violating weather, which of course was enough. Tomorrow morning, as things currently stand, as of the latest forecast issued yesterday, there was a 25% chance for unfavorable weather, or a 75% chance that the weather is acceptable. One shift from today's forecast to tomorrow's as well is that the lightning risk has dropped off for a launch attempt on Monday morning. Meteorologists still tracking the possibility of rain in the area within about a 5-mile radius of the pad. So that will still be potentially a watch item. Certainly want to thank all of you for sticking with us for this launch attempt once again today. A big thanks to our friends Pete Carsons with Max Q Productions and to Chuck and Jen Briggs with C&J Images. Want to thank Michael McGrory and AI for gifting 5 Spaceflight Now memberships each, and to Chuck Close for a very generous $25 super chat. Appreciate that generosity from all of you. Also, thanks to Rick Donner and Mark Otto for holding it down in the live chat today. Really appreciate you guys helping us out. Thanks as well to our photography team for being at the ready in the hopes of seeing this Falcon fly. Fingers crossed that Monday is the day. This would be the 5th attempt for SpaceX to try to launch this mission. We'll see how the dice land. Our thanks as well to our Spaceflight Now editor, Stephen Young, for running the technical operations of the broadcast alongside John Pisani, and to Adam Bernstein for stalwartly setting up the cameras once again to see a wonderful wet dress rehearsal for this Falcon 9 rocket, as things unfortunately turned out. For all of us here at Spaceflight Now, I'm Will Robinson Smith. Remember, be good to yourselves, be good to others. We will see you next time, folks. And until then, enjoy your Sunday, and bye-bye.